putting aside the weight increases, which I think is a really good thing for the sport, Tyler also ended the video by saying that they are going to institute for Classic Physique height cards, which we've been calling for years, not just me, other people as well. Dave Palumbo here with an RX Muscle news update. Word just in from the IFBB Pro offices. Tyler Manion, the vice president, announced that they will be making increases in the weight classes of all the Classic Physique height divisions, which is good news if you're a Classic Physique competitor, because now you can weigh a little bit more. Now, I guess the way they decided to do this was, I guess they were analyzing the different height per weight categories. And for people who don't understand how it works, for a given height, you can only weigh so much, and that kind of limits the proportion of the Classic Physique competitors, so they're not going to get, it's not going to turn into open bodybuilding. I guess, but when they looked at all the different height and weight classes, I guess they realized that the taller, I guess it's from the 6'1 to 6'2 class, those guys can weigh a little bit more than the lighter class guys, and so they had, I guess, made a mistake, or maybe they increased their weight too much. So what I guess they're doing is, from what I understand, is that they're going to bump up all the weight classes so that everyone can weigh a little bit more, 2 pounds more. And then the lighter classes that kind of got cheated on the last weight bump, they're going to add 5 pounds. So they're going to get a 7-pound weight bump, the lower classes, and then the taller guys are going to get a 2-pound weight bump. There's a chart on the IFBBPro.com website, so you guys can see exactly what the new height classes are, and the new weight per height classes are. I think it's a good idea. I like the fact that the classic guys can get a little bit bigger and look a little bit more like bodybuilders, as long as they're keeping the classic look. And that's, the judges are really doing a great job judging that class, because they're really keeping it, a class based on structure. We're not seeing guys with big blocky waists. We're not seeing mass monsters in that class. Even if they can make weight, the guys that are being rewarded are the guys with superior structure. Guys like Bumstead, Ramon Dino, Urs Kalasinski. So I think Rough Diesel. I think that what they're doing is good, and by bumping it a little bit at a time, it kind of gives guys a chance to kind of grow into the new class. Now, should they get rid of weight classes altogether and just let these guys, get as big as they want, as long as it's not ruining their structure? Maybe in the future that might be the case. I think, but for now, I think this is a good compromise. I think it's going to help guys like Ramon Dino, who have trouble making weight. Only I think he fits into that 6'1", 6'2" category, which is only going to get a 2-pound bump, if I'm understanding Tyler's video correctly. But for a guy who has to suck down every last pound to make that weight, it can only help him. Now the question is, will guys who have gone from Classic to the 212 division, Breon Ansley comes to mind, he just moved up. Keon Pearson has moved up. Will they go back now? Because if they're going to get a 7-pound bump, essentially, that's a lot of weight on those guys' frame, because they're small in terms of height. I think that they could probably squeeze back into that class. I say they're not. I didn't reach out to anyone and ask them, but I have a feeling they will not, and I'll tell you why. Because the Classic Physique division has got a champion who is right now unbeatable in Chris Bumstead. He's the most popular guy in the entire sport. He's got the most followers on social media, and he's extremely dominant. He seems like he can't be beat right now, and he's still young. So he's got all those things going in his favor. So a guy like, Breon Ansley, who was the champ, a previous champ, he knows he's not going to beat Bumstead, given the situation the way it is, even with a weight bump. You got Keon Pearson also, who probably won't beat Bumstead either, because he's too short. And Bumstead just has that height advantage, and it really helps him. So the 212 division, however, is kind of in flux. I mean, Sean Clarita is the champ, twice now in 2 separate occasions, but he's hardly a champ that can't be beat. Okay, so there's a vulnerability in that class, and I think that guys like Keon and Breon see that vulnerability there, and I think for them that's a challenge. Hey, we can go into this 212 class, we can put more muscle on, nothing's holding us back, and we can possibly challenge for an Olympia title here. So I don't think we're going to see guys like that go backwards into the classic division. I think the taller guys are probably happy that they're getting a little bit of a weight bump, but 2 pounds is not that much for the tall guys. It'll probably benefit mostly the guys that are just turning pro, who look really good in classic and who maybe would have had problems with making weight. Now they have a much higher weight class, especially the guys who are 5'6", 5'7", 5'8", 5'9", 5'10". You're going to see those guys move up the ranks, I think, because they have that's 7 pounds is a big jump in some of those height classes. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I don't think it's going to change anything at the top of the division. I think it's going to affect future guys coming into the division more, giving them an ability to stay in classic longer before they might have to move on to 212 or possibly even open, if they so decide to want to add more muscle. But it seems like that seems to be the trend. Guys start out in classic. Once they outgrow that, they move into the open if they're tall guys, and if they're shorter guys, they can go into the 212 and make that 212 cutoff. But I think correcting the height to weight divisions was a good move on Tyler and the NPC, IFBB's, on their part, because let's face it, you want it to be as even as possible. Now, I'm hearing that they're also going to be bumping up the height per weight classes for the NPC amateur, which I think is really important, because I don't know why they're not the same. They let the pros get heavier, which makes it hard for a guy who's turning pro, who's got to make a lighter weight class, to then go into the pro ranks and make a big impact, because they still have to gain back weight that they were holding their bodies back from in the amateur ranks. So that might be something they might want to address, bring up those amateur weight classes to more evenly kind of mimic what's going on in the pros. I don't think it's going to hurt the amateur ranks whatsoever. If anything, it might encourage guys to stay in the amateur ranks a little longer to get their bodies up to the size they need to, so that when they do go to the pro ranks, they can make an immediate impact. And people forget, Chris Bumstead didn't go from classic to classic. He went from bodybuilding champion at the North Americans to classic. So he went up and then down. He just so happened to be able to fit into the class because of his height. So most guys, however, don't do that. They go from classic to classic, or they go from bodybuilding to bodybuilding when they go from the amateurs to the pros. Chris made an immediate impact because of the fact that he was a bodybuilder. He had a lot more size on his body. Putting aside the weight increases, which I think is a really good thing for the sport, Tyler also ended the video by saying that they are going to institute for Classic Physique height cards, which we've been calling for years, not just me, other people as well. I mean, to go to a show and not know what your height is, which means that you don't really know what you can weigh, is ludicrous. You can't be heighted at a show and then think you made the weight, and meanwhile you got to be 10 pounds lighter. So I think the fact that they're going to do height cards now is a wonderful thing. The way they're going to do it, I think, is very fair. They're going to take 3 heights throughout the contest year. I don't know when they're going to start this, but you'll be heighted in 3 times. Once you have all 3 of those heights, they'll average them, because sometimes you're a little tall, a little shorter, depending on how dehydrated you are, how many hours you've been on your feet. So they're going to take the average of the 3 heights that they measure you at, and that will be your official height on your height card for the rest of your Classic Physique Pro career, I guess. And that's great, because then you just go, show them your card, you know what your weight is. If you miss it, it's your own fault. The old way, you didn't know what your height was, because you never knew if you were going to be half an inch taller or shorter, and sometimes, you got the short end of the stick, so to speak. So this is a very, very good rule that they're implementing. Height cards for Classic Physique, you're going to have to be checked 3 times, but once you get those 3 heights in and they do the average, you'll have a permanent height card, and I think that's great for the sport. So Good job, guys up there in the ivory tower who are coming up with all these rules. We really like it. So these are two good rule changes we have here. We have increased weights for not only the pros, but for the amateurs. And we have permanent height cards now for the pros so that they're going to know what they have to weigh when they go to that weigh-in at the show. Good changes. I like when I see stuff like that. This is good for the sport, good for the growth of the classic physique division. Dave Palumbo with an RX Muscle news update.